So dudes, it's your boy Tuhu. Today I wanted to talk about how people play gacha games, as in stuff like, are you a free-to-play or are you a whale? Are you a waifu or husbando only player or not? And if you like to play gacha for the story or not, and why at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you play them, so long as you're playing it the way you want to play and you ain't out here preaching to other people that your way is the correct way. First, the free-to-play versus whale thing. To set the context here, ever since gacha games started picking up traction out in the West, it's always been an underlying theme across gacha communities whether you play while spending money or not. I'm not sure if this is as much of a thing back in the East with the Asian gacha communities, but to me, it feels like Western gacha players tend to care a lot more about whether you whale on a gacha or not, mainly because it's a lot less culturally and socially acceptable here in the West. Japanese VTubers can literally get up in the middle of their streams to go grab some premium cards from their nearby convenience stores just so they can keep whaling on whatever dumb gacha they're playing, while whenever a Western streamer, or one with a primarily English-speaking audience at least, tries out a new gacha game and they get to the gacha part, there's usually a handful of chatters in stream who start typing with optional all caps, "Don't do it, don't whale, man," or shit like that, like they know what's best for their streamer. And I think the main reason why it's not as socially acceptable for Westerners to go whale on gacha is because as gamers, we really don't like the idea of microtransactions. No thanks to any Western dev studio or publisher over the years abusing the shit out of them, so now anything that even remotely sounds like a microtransaction in upcoming games makes us scream like Gigi screams at doors. And I'm sure there are cultural reasons too, because the pieces of shit called Nexon, Netmarble, and every other big Korean online game publisher inflate their games with microtransactions so blatantly pay to win that they make EA look like a fucking charity, and they're still out there doing that shit. So I can only assume that the Koreans are okay with that to a certain degree at least. Hey, as an ethnic Korean myself, let me tell you, we do love ourselves a little bit of gamba. So it's no wonder that when gacha games first started picking up traction out here in the West, right, there would inevitably be some conflict between free-to-plays and whales. Like back when I first started picking up gacha games starting with FGO, I remember being told that apparently there had been a Reddit post that was made about me, roasting me for being a whale because I was posting videos on this channel back then showing off my account and what it looked like after however much money I had spent on it. Sure, maybe it's not exactly surprising that someone out there would be salty enough about me spending money on a gacha game to go make a Reddit post about it. I mean, this is Reddit after all. But this is obviously a much more widespread phenomenon than that. Like, you don't need me to point out how people like to regurgitate the whole free-to-play by the way slogan like it's their life motto or some shit. Whether they say it unironically or not almost doesn't even matter. The fact that people care about being free-to-play and up to the point where you have big streamers like Mr. Pokey putting that shit on his stream titles is telling enough. It's even gotten to the point where there are people out there who see others who spend money on gacha as like second or third class players and have this sense of arrogance just because they play some Coomer bait gacha without spending money, and they think that's supposed to be some kind of achievement. So, now that we've gone over all this, it seems like a good time for me to drop the hammer here. It doesn't fucking matter how you decide to play gacha. Whether you want to spend some money, a lot of money, or no money at all should be purely up to you, and no one else should tell you or judge you otherwise. To hopefully many of you, this might seem like a painfully obvious thing to say, like, yeah, duh. It should be your own decision whether or not you want to go waste your own damn money on some dumb fuck gacha like an idiot. And you're right, it should be an obvious thing to have to say. But here's the thing about gacha players as a whole. They're not terribly intelligent. I mean, take it from me who's gone broke playing these things. Like, no online community ever is, to be fair, but gacha players are quite the remarkable breed of brain dead. Like, the kind of shit gacha players say and do on a regular basis on the internet needs to be studied type shit. And ever since Genshin Impact came out and absolutely catapulted the gacha genre into mainstream Western gaming culture, we now have to deal with a ton more people who don't play gacha but know what it is, or think they know what it is, on the outside looking in with whatever uninformed or misinformed or potentially even retarded takes on gacha games that they may or may not have, that they then go spread on social media like it's the pandemic all over again. So as someone who's more qualified to say this than the vast majority of gacha content creators out there, let me tell you, it doesn't fucking matter. free to play, dolphin, whale, who fucking cares, bro? At the end of the day, we're all goddamn autistic sociopaths for thinking that playing gacha games was ever a good idea in the first place. And for those of you who don't play gacha and you still like shitting on it for some reason, shut the fuck up, bitch. Go queue back up in the league so you can go throw racial slurs at your teammates for being just as retarded as you. Now, back to talking about people who are dumb enough to play gacha games. Everyone's got their own reasons for whaling or not, right? If you're a whale, maybe it's because you're like me and you're a collector, so you want to have everything in the game. Maybe it's because there are characters that you really want and you're willing to go balls deep to max them out, like get them C6 or E6 or whatever. Or maybe it's because you're just a degen-ass gambling addict who just rolls for the thrill of potentially getting lucky and you need to go call a hotline right fucking now. If you're free to play, maybe it's because you're not comfortable spending hundreds of dollars just to get pixels in a stupid phone game, right? And on a related note, maybe it's also because you don't like the whole idea of a gacha because it's essentially gambling and therefore predatory by nature. Maybe you're free to play even though you have the money to whale because it's genuinely more satisfying for you to play that way, being able to play a gacha without spending much money or any at all and still being able to keep up with content. Or maybe it's just because you're also a broke-ass motherfucker like me. I'll elaborate more on this in a separate video in the near future, but the main reason why it doesn't matter if you spend on gachas or not is because many gacha games out there, the better ones anyway, are actually not pay to win. Fancy that. As long as you can get through all the main content without having to pay, spending is optional and thus a personal choice. Which means at that point, it's up to you. Right? So long as you know exactly why you are or aren't spending money on a gacha and you can afford it if you are, who fucking cares what some dipshit on the internet says about what you're doing? It's your account. You do what you want with it. You can apply the same logic to other weird ways that people choose to play their gacha games, such as only playing waifu or husbando characters, or caring about story in a gacha game or not, or even something as simple as just playing every day and using your stamina on a regular basis or not. There are people out there who only play the waifu characters and don't bother with any of the guys. In any gacha game where you can pull both guys and girls, there's always going to be a contingent of players like that, and I'm sure the opposite can be true too. The other side of the spectrum also holds true where you have people who only play the meta characters and nothing else. I mean, you don't need me to talk about those people now, do you? There are people out there who don't give a fuck about the story in their gacha games and just skip that shit for one reason or another. I bring this up specifically because I remember lurking in one of Numi's streams recently and hearing her talk about how she doesn't get why you would even play gacha games in the first place, if not for their stories or something along those lines. While I do agree that ideally, you should consume all the content that a game has to offer, especially a gacha game, and that includes reading the story, there are plenty of reasons why some people won't do so. Maybe you're busy and you just don't have the time to sit down and read a story that goes on and on for hours at a time. Maybe you'd rather use that time to go do something else. Maybe you only care about playing the game and not reading it. Maybe you don't like the story because it's not that good or you're just not personally feeling it. Or in my case, maybe you have a dozen other gachas that you have to fucking juggle, and so reading the story is usually not an option for you. And speaking of content creators, some, well, more like a lot of people, streamers and normal players alike, don't log onto their gachas and grind dailies and use their stamina every day. Like, gacha games are designed for you to log on every day, do your dailies, and spend your stamina for level up materials and whatnot. So if you play a gacha and you don't do this, then technically, you're playing it wrong. So why don't people grind gachas day in, day out? Well, maybe it's because they're busy and they don't have the time to do that every single day, right? Maybe they don't feel like playing gacha games every single fucking day when they'd rather go do something else. You get the picture.
I should be the only motherfucker getting praise in the Genshin community because I don't spend money on Genshin Impact. If you want a
What the f?
Like, whatever your reason is for doing anything in a gacha, that's fine, but my biggest pet peeve about all this is when people who are high off the smell of their own piss start keyboard warrioring their way across social media about how their way of playing or not playing a gacha is somehow the correct way. Whether it's because they don't spend any money and so they're better players because of it than those who do, or how they do spend money and anyone else who doesn't is a broke ass bitch and should just say so, how they only play the so-called best characters in the game, and if you don't, you're playing the game wrong. How they only play their favorite characters, and if you use the best units in the game, then you're a dirty fucking meta slut. Or it can even be as something as innocent as what Numi said about how if you don't read a gacha story, then why bother playing it at all? Just because you play a gacha game one way and that's what you're used to, does not somehow give you the moral prerogative to preach that shit on your social media platform of choice. There is no proper way to gacha. At its core, it's as simple as roll for the characters you goon to or think are really strong, play as much of it as you want, and spend as much money on it as you want as long as you're not using your fucking rent money, and that's it. Again, everyone has their own reasons for playing a gacha the way they do, and I'm not a big fan of people telling others how they should or shouldn't play, especially when people try to take the moral standpoint or use their status as a way to make themselves feel superior over others. The whole free to play by the way thing that I mentioned earlier. Like, if you're someone who says that unironically, then holy shit, get your fucking head out of your ass, bitch, because you sound like some of those Hoyoverse boycotters earlier this year on Twitter. I wonder how well their boycott's doing, by the way. Some of you may wonder what the point of me making this video is, because admittedly I spend like 15 minutes or so yapping about gacha games and the weird ways people play them, just to say play them however you want, which is something that most of you, like I said earlier, should already be doing anyway if you've got at least 2 brain cells to rub together. But in this era of online gaming where information, true or not, travels faster than the fucking speed of light, and social interaction is 3/4 Zoomer or Gen Alpha brain rot, it's disturbingly easy for people to get the wrong impression about things. And out of all the gaming genres out there, gacha games gotta be one of the most misunderstood. It also doesn't help that a lot of the people who play gachas, like I said earlier, are not the most intelligent. And I count myself as one of them, because who in their right fucking mind would look at a dozen gacha games and say, yeah, I think I'll play all of them. Oh, what's that? GFL 2's out for pre-reg right now? Shit, say no more, fam. But what makes it worse are the people who don't play gacha games and still act like they know enough about them to talk shit. Like people who might have tried Genshin Impact for like a week back when it first came out, just because all their friends were playing it and their favorite streamers are paid to play it, and that's all the gacha experience they have. And the only exposure to gacha games they have nowadays are when gacha drama goes down on Twitter, or Lakari goes viral for having a mental illness and a dent in his head, or Asmongold watching a video on NTE and calling it impressive, when you know damn well that he ain't touching that shit unless Hata Studio comes along and shoves a couple tens of grands down his throat, just like how MiHoYo probably did the same to get him to play Star Rail. I mean, he still hasn't touched Genshin, so why the fuck do you think he's ever gonna play NTE, much less without a sponsor? Right now, gacha games are the most susceptible when it comes to public perception of them out here in the West, because as a genre, they're quite recent. Like, they've obviously been around for a lot longer, but to the vast majority of Westerners who play gacha or know what it is or have an idea of what it is, functionally, gacha only started existing for them back when Genshin first took off 4 years ago. In comparison, other more established gaming genres have been around for much longer and thus are more familiar, so despite what their reputations are like, people will still play them regardless. People talk shit about games like League all the time, and Riot has their own bullshit microtransaction incidents like that $500 Ari skin in League and that 700 Gwen skin in TFT, and yet people still play those games religiously. And Asmongold out here doesn't feel the need to make his daily react content about it. Oh wait, he did. Whoops, my bad. His NTE React video got way more views though. Clearly that means people care more about gacha games, right? Jokes aside, my point is that it's extremely easy for people to get the wrong idea about gacha games because of their unfamiliarity, made worse by whatever dogshit content creator out there that they happen to watch who also has no idea about gacha games, making content about them, giving their dogshit takes about gacha games. And as I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, for a guy like me who spends way too much fucking time playing all this gacha slop, this is a major motivating factor for me to make content about gacha games, to be one of the few content creators on this platform who actually has half an idea about what the fuck he's talking about when it comes to all that slop. All this to say, if you see anyone out there call gacha games pay to win without any further elaboration, or you see dipshits in stream chats asking why their streamer isn't playing in a certain dub like English or Japanese, immediately disregard any opinion they might have on gachas from that moment forward. Gacha games are trash, so you play them however you want to play them, because it doesn't fucking matter at the end of the day. But at the same time, don't project your ways of playing that trash onto others, because again, it doesn't fucking matter. And those are my thoughts on that. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video and subscribe for more in case you haven't already. I also dual stream to both YouTube and Twitch, twitch.tv/ToeSniper98, so stop by if you want to hang out and talk about Gacha. Check out the Patreon if you want to see your name at the end of these videos, and until next time, be cool y'all. Peace.